Chapter 3478. She was digging a hole for them during dinner. Yun Chujio returned the missing herb to the little fatty and the others. Although the little fatty realized that some of the leaves were missing, he did not dare to ask too much because his heart was currently in a mess. Xian Yuanzhua was going to bring people to deal with this little devil at night. Should he inform the others? The little fatty secretly gathered the other 7 people to discuss. The 8 of them did not have the same opinion. Some people felt that it was not bad to be able to borrow Xian Yuanzhuo's hands to deal with those 2 little things. At the very least, they would be able to vent their anger. Some people were worried that if Xian Yuanzhuo failed, then their lives would be in deep trouble in the future. After discussing for a long time, they still could not come to a conclusion. At this moment, they heard the little pervert in the dormitory call out to them, "Little ones, quickly come in. This king has something to announce." The little fatty and the others looked at each other and could only enter the dormitory nervously. The moment they entered the dormitory, they saw the little pervert sitting on a chair, swinging his 2 short legs and looking at them with a faint smile. Inexplicably, the hearts of the 8 people tightened. Could it be that this little pervert already knew? Yun Chujio glanced at the 8 people and said with a smile, "This king hates being betrayed the most." Once, a one-eyed wolf raised by this king bit this king. Do you know what happened to that one-eyed wolf? The little fatty and the others felt that Yun Chujio's smile was particularly scary. They subconsciously shook their heads and stuttered, "No, I don't know. It's nothing. It's just that the dinner that day was wolf stew," Yun Chujio said lightly. After Yun Chujio said that, she didn't say anything else. She just used her little meaty claws to slowly and rhythmically knock on the table. Her eyes were cold as she looked at the little fatty and the others. The little fatty and the others immediately understood that Yun Chujio was knocking on their heads. They could not help but break out in cold sweat. They really did not understand why the little thing in front of them would bring them such great fear. The little fatty was the first to be unable to hold on. He said with a trembling voice, Your Majesty, ill say. The 9th prince is going to bring people over to beat you up tonight. But this has nothing to do with us. He said it himself. We tried to stop him, but we did not succeed. The other children also echoed him. Even the children who initially wanted to use Xian Yuanzhuo's hand to teach Yun Chujio a lesson had turned against him. They all echoed the little fatty's words, wanting to get rid of themselves. Yun Chujio's little face revealed a trace of a cold smile. You say it quite nicely. Did you really not have any intention of letting Xian Yuanzhua avenge you at that time? A few of the children immediately revealed a panicked and guilty look. Yun Chujio saw the changes in their expressions one by one, then, she said indifferently, I'll give you a chance to prove your loyalty to me. As for whether you can seize it or not, it's up to you. The little fatty and the others immediately had a bad premonition in their hearts. They kept feeling that the little thing in front of them was digging a pit for them to jump into. Moreover, it was a bottomless pit. The little fatty asked with a trembling voice, What opportunity? Isn't Xian Yuanzhua going to bring some people over to beat me up later? Let's prepare some gifts for them so that their trip will not be in vain. You guys do this, do you hear me? Yun Chujio told them her idea. The little fatty and the others were so shocked that they almost sat on the ground. If they did as she said, they would have completely offended Xian Yuanzhua. However, if they did not do as she said, this little pervert would not spare them. What should they do? Chapter 3479. Beating people up. Yun Chujio did not urge them. She continued to knock on the table, putting invisible pressure on them. After a while, the little fatty gritted his teeth and said, Your Majesty, I will do as you say. The little fatty had thought it through. If it really did not work out, he would go and seek refuge with Deng Qianyuan. Xian Yuanzhua could not do anything to him. With the little fatty leading the way, the other children also agreed to Yun Chujio's arrangement and began to prepare a big gift for Xian Yuanzhua. When Yun Chujio saw that the little fatty and the others were getting busy, she looked at Di Biming with a smug look on her face. Di Biming curled his lips. This little rascal was able to have fun with a bunch of naughty children. There was really no one else. After about 2 hours, the sound of footsteps came from outside the door. Then, the door was kicked open. Xian Yuanzhua brought the 9 people in his group and barged into the dormitory. Xian Yuanzhua had originally planned to work with the little fatty and the others to give that little thing a good beating after barging in. This way, the news of him sticking up for his subordinates would spread, and Deng Qianyuan's people might join him. He had thought it through quite well, but who would have thought that they would be tripped by a few ropes as soon as they charged into the dormitory. Then, their heads would be covered by gunny sacks, and they would be beaten up without any explanation. They did not have the slightest bit of alertness. In addition, it was dark at night, and the space in the room was limited, so they were beaten up by the little fatty and the others. At first, the little fatty and the others were a little scared, but later they realized that it did not seem to be a big deal. Since they had already made their move, they did not have any scruples. Moreover, they had been bullied by He Xinjiu for the past 2 days, so they vented their anger on Xian Yuanzhua and the others. In an instant, the 4 groups of dormitories were filled with wails and howls, causing the other dormitories to come over and watch. However, the space in the dormitories was limited, so everyone could only squeeze through the door and look inside. Yun Chujio felt that the beating was almost over, so she asked Fatty and the others to stop. Then, she walked up to Xian Yuanzhua with the whip in her hand and gave him a hard whip. She said, "I heard that you want to pretend to be a garlic clove to take care of this king. You really are an idiot. How could my people betray me?" Xian Yuanzuo's face was bruised and swollen from the beating. He glared fiercely at Yun Chujio, then used an even colder gaze to look at the little fatty and the others. "You actually treat me like this. Just you wait." The little fatty and the others could not help but feel some lingering fear. Xian Yuanzhua was the 9th prince of the Jun Tian kingdom. If they were chosen by the Li Hate Palace, it would be fine. But if they were not chosen, Xian Yuanzhua would definitely take revenge on them and their family clans. Yun Chujio glanced at Fatty and the others, then at Xian Yuanzhua. Who doesn't know how to boast? This king is not someone who is scared. I have already beaten up enough today. Get lost. Xian Yuanzhua coldly glanced at Yun Chujio, Fatty, and the others, then was carried away by a few children. Soon, the surrounding children also dispersed. Yun Chujio looked at Fatty and the others and said indifferently, "Close the door. This king has something to say to you." The little fatty rolled and crawled as he closed the door. With a sobbing tone, he said, "Your Majesty, what should we do? If we are not chosen by the Li Hate Palace, the 9th prince will definitely take revenge on us." Yun Chujio glanced at him indifferently. She said faintly, "What are you afraid of? The law does not punish the masses. Can't we just make everyone his enemy? Of course, there is still a once-and-for-all method. That is to kill him. Which method do you choose?" Chapter 3480 Picking herbs. The little fatty and the others were so frightened by He Xinjia's words that they almost sat on the ground. Although they had been cultivating since they were young, they had only killed some demonic beasts at most. How could they have killed anyone? This little pervert wanted to kill Xian Yuanzhua right away. He had scared them to death, all right. After a long while, the little fatty swallowed his saliva and said with a trembling voice, It's better to choose the first method. However, how can we make everyone his enemy? It's fine with Deng Qianyuan's people. They are not enemies to begin with, but there are still dozens of people who are the 9th prince's followers. How can we make them the 9th prince's enemies? Yun Chujio narrowed her eyes. Can't we just make them my subordinates? When the time comes, let them beat up Xian Yuanzhua, and Xian Yuanzhua will naturally hate them. The little fatty and the others looked at Yun Chujio in a daze. Wasn't this little pervert a little too arrogant? She actually wanted to make those dozens of people her subordinates. How could she do that? Yun Chujio did not answer their questions. Instead, she waved her claws. This king is sleepy. Go to sleep. Although the little fatty and the others were terrified and confused, they did not dare to ask any more questions. They could only return to their beds to rest. The next morning, after the old man, instructor Jing Jiaoshi, arrived, he threw a large basket of medicinal herbs to each group and asked them to pick out the same medicinal herbs that had been given to them the day before. When the children saw the large basket of medicinal herbs that all looked extremely similar, they were instantly dumbfounded. If there was sufficient time, they could carefully compare the medicinal herbs one by one with the samples in their hands. However, they only had half a minute's time. It was simply more difficult than ascending to the heavens to pick out all of them. Especially the little fatty and the others, who were holding the herbs whose leaves had been plucked, it was even harder to tell which one was the herb they were looking for. Hei Shinjo blinked her eyes. Of course, she didn't care if the points would be deducted, but seeing the expressions of the little fatty and the others who were about to cry, her conscience that had disappeared for a long time finally showed up. She scratched the wicker basket a few times, then took out a few herbs and threw them into the empty wicker basket at the side. She said carelessly, "Hurry up and pick, what are you waiting for? Look at me, I picked so many in such a short time." The little fatty and the others were about to cry. "Are you picking? It was purely a random grab, how could this work?" Although the few of them wanted to put the random grab Yun Chujio made back into the wicker basket, they thought about the little pervert's whip and gave up on that idea. The few miserable children tried their best to rummage through the wicker basket, hoping to find a few more correct herbs. 15 minutes passed in the blink of an eye. The children looked at the wicker baskets of the other groups at the same time. When they saw that there were dozens of herbs in the fourth group's wicker basket, they could not help but twitch their lips. They must have picked them randomly, it was impossible to have so many correct herbs. When little fatty and the others saw that the herbs they picked were more than twice the number of other groups, they immediately looked at Hei Shinjo with resentment. They were really unlucky. How could they be in the same dormitory as such a little pervert? It was fine if they were bullied, but not only did they completely offend Ninth Prince, they would probably lose points again this time. Instructor Deng walked to the wicker basket of each group and inspected it, then brought the wicker basket of the fourth group to the front. The faces of little fatty and the others instantly turned pale. It was over. They were definitely going to be severely criticized. They were going to lose points. Chapter 3481 Killing people. Seeing this, Xian Yuanjua revealed a ruthless expression. These people actually dared to help that smelly girl deal with him. As long as they were driven out of this place, he would think of a way to kill them in the future. The other children had gloating expressions on their faces. The fourth group would definitely lose points. The more points they lost, the better. This way, their competitors would be much fewer. Jing Jiaoshi glanced at everyone and said, "Except for the fourth group, everyone in the other groups will lose 10 points. Hei Shinjo was not surprised by this, but she did not expect it to be so ruthless. Lose 10 points directly? Fuck, if she had known this would happen, she would have chosen fewer correct herbs. Immediately, someone raised an objection. Jing Jiaoshi, why can't the fourth group lose points? Instructor Jing Jiaoshi said coldly, on what basis? On the basis that the fourth group has found more correct medicinal herbs than you. If you are not convinced, take these medicinal herbs back and pick them slowly. After Instructor Jing said these words, he did not care about the medicinal herbs and directly walked away. Yun Chujio was secretly amazed. Not to mention other things in the hateful palace, these instructors had a very good character. Yun Chujio kept all the herbs she had gathered into her storage ring. These herbs could be used to feed Go Weiba. Little Fatty and the others did not dare to say anything when they saw this. The main thing was that they had not recovered from their shock until now. They had actually gotten first place. The feeling of going from hell to paradise in an instant was simply dizzying. They had not picked out a few in total, and most of the herbs in the bamboo basket had been randomly plucked by their king. Could it be that those herbs were actually correct? The gazes the children used to look at the fourth group had some changes. Right now, the fourth group had the fewest points deducted, so it had clearly become the target of everyone's exclusion. This was especially so for Xian Yuanzhua. The gaze he used to look at Yun Chuzhou and the others was as if it had been tempered with poison. At this moment, an old man walked in from outside the door. The old man's body had a cold and gloomy aura. The children immediately quieted down and looked at the old man with some fear. The palace of hatred never accepts cowards. Today's assessment is very simple, and that is, to kill. The old man said coldly. The children immediately cried out in surprise. What did he mean by this? Was he actually asking them to kill? Yun Chuzhou cursed in her heart. The palace of hatred was indeed not a good place. There was actually such an assessment. It was truly freakish. The old man swept his gaze over everyone, and the children immediately quieted down. The old man clapped his hands, and 10 people were escorted in by guards. Those 10 people were all tied up and clearly did not have the slightest ability to resist. The old man coldly said, "If you all want to not lose points, then come forward and kill one of them. As you all have seen, there are only 10 people here, which means that only 10 of you have a chance. Let's begin now." Xian Yuanzuo's eyes revealed a ruthless determination. He had long ago killed a few disobedient servants in the imperial palace, so killing people was simply a piece of cake for him. He walked to the front, drew his treasured sword, and cleanly killed a person. Seeing Xian Yuanzuo's ruthlessness, the children couldn't help but cry out in surprise. The faces of the little fatty and the others were deathly pale. They really didn't dare to imagine how Xian Yuanzhua would deal with them if they couldn't enter the Li Hate Palace. When Deng Qianyuan saw that Xian Yuanzhua had killed a person, he gritted his teeth. If he did not dare to kill a person, his lackeys might seek refuge with Xian Yuanzhua. Thus, he could only bite the bullet and kill a person with his eyes closed. Chapter 3482 followed this king to rob with Xian Yuanzhua and Deng Qianyuan taking the lead. Another 8 slightly older children walked up and killed the remaining 8 people. The old man's expression did not change. He only ordered the guards in charge of recording to deduct 10 points from everyone except Xian Yuanzhua, and then left. After the old man left, many children sat on the ground paralyzed. This was the first time they had seen a killing scene, so it was difficult for them to get used to it. Perhaps to give the children some time to recover, there were no other classes scheduled that day. The head of the guards let the children make their own arrangements. The little fatty and the others staggered back to the dormitory, their faces full of fear. They were really afraid that Xian Yuanzhua would take revenge on them. Moreover, among the 8 children who had killed, several of them were from the same dormitory as Xian Yuanzhua. They were also the people who had been beaten up by them. Yun Chuzhou narrowed her eyes. She had planned to play a little trick and take Xian Yuanzuo's lackeys as her own and then isolate Xian Yuanzhua. But now, it seemed that Xian Yuanzhua was cruel and merciless. It was best to kill him to avoid future trouble. However, this plan had to be planned more carefully. It was most suitable to kill someone by borrowing someone else's knife. That night, He Xinjiu waved her little paws and said, "Little ones, let's go and rob with this king." Rob? The little fatty and the others were dumbfounded. What was this little pervert trying to do? Why was he robbing them all of a sudden? Did he think that he had not caused enough trouble? However, they did not dare to disobey her, so they could only follow He Xinjiu out of the room. A certain someone did not intend to get involved, but when he saw He Xinjiu leaving with the others, he thought for a moment and decided to follow her. He Xinjiu kicked open the door of Xian Yuanzuo's dormitory, then whipped the ground a few times and said fiercely, "Hand over all the good stuff on you, or else I'll kill all of you." The little fatty and the others were about to cry. This little pervert actually wanted to rob Xian Yuanzhua and the others. There were quite a few people who had killed people in this room. Wasn't he asking for a beating? Xian Yuanzhua was first stunned when he saw Yun Chuzhou and the others. Then, he laughed sinisterly. This wretched girl was really asking for death. Since she had delivered herself to his doorstep, then don't blame him for being ruthless. Since there was a rule against killing people, then he would cripple her limbs and dantian. He could use her to establish his authority. Just as Xian Yuanzhua was thinking about it, he heard the little girl shout, "What are you all standing there for? Attack together. If anyone doesn't attack, I will whip him." He Xinjiu took the lead and whipped a child who had killed people today. The child was hit by the whip and a bloody scar appeared on his face. He could not help but become angry out of humiliation. He took out a treasured sword and fought with Yun Chuzhou. "You dare to use a sword? What a bitch! Little ones, he has already used a weapon, what are you waiting for? Use your weapons." He Xinjiu shouted shamelessly. This guy did not even think about it. She was the one who had used the whip first, but now she was accusing the other party of using a weapon first. While the little fatty and the others were still hesitating, Xian Yuanzuo's followers summoned their weapons and rushed towards them. The dormitory was originally small, and now that they had used their weapons, it was instantly in chaos. Seeing that no one was going to deal with him, and seeing that Yun Chuzhou and that child were fighting so fiercely, a trace of viciousness flashed through Xian Yuanzuo's eyes. He raised the sword in his hand and stabbed it towards Yun Chuzhou's back. Chapter 3483, Sword stabbed into each other. A certain someone, who had been watching indifferently at the door, had a cold glint in his eyes. This person deserved to die. A certain someone did not make a move, because he knew that the little rascal would not bring people to rob for no reason. He definitely had a motive. Moreover, with Xian Yuanzuo's skills, it was impossible for him to hurt the little rascal. Just as a certain honored warrior was thinking, he heard two screams. Then, everyone in the room stared blankly at one spot. They saw that Xian Yuanzhua and his lackey had a sword stuck in their chests, and the hilts of the two swords were still held in each other's hands. The two of them still maintained their standing posture. Their eyes were filled with fear and anger as they fell to the ground in front of everyone's eyes. "Oh my God! Someone died. I was scared to death." He Xinjiu, who was stunned at the side, fell to the ground with a faint. The rest of the children finally regained their senses and cried out in fear. If it was just a fight, no one would care about it. However, this person had died, and one of the dead was a prince of the Jun Tian kingdom. This matter was going to blow up. When the guards heard the commotion, they rushed over. When they saw the two children stabbing each other with their swords, they were stunned. Did they die together? The leader of the guards began to interrogate them about what happened. Everyone told him everything. As for how Xian Yuanzhua and his lackey stabbed each other with their swords, they did not know. Because it was already chaotic and the dormitory was small, no one noticed what happened. However, a child in Xian Yuanzuo's dormitory said, at that time, Lu Hong was fighting with Xiao Bao. Maybe she knew what was going on. The leader immediately looked at He Xinjiu, who had just woken up. He Xinjiu said in shock, "I was fighting with him at that time. Then, he stabbed at me. I dodged to the side, and then, I saw the two of them in such a state." The leader frowned. Could it be that Xian Yuanzhua was trying to sneak an attack on Xiao Bao from behind? He didn't expect Xiao Bao to dodge to the side, and he couldn't retract his attack in time, so he stabbed Lu Hong. Lu Hong couldn't retract his attack in time and stabbed him. He was not the only one who thought so. Almost everyone present thought so. Xian Yuanzhua had wanted to sneak an attack on Xiao Bao, but in the end, he and Lu Hong's lives were at stake. It was really a case of robbing the goose that laid the golden eggs. The little leader took out a voice transmission talisman and reported the news to Instructor Deng. Very soon, Instructor Deng rushed over. He inquired about the incident and then checked the two's wounds. He didn't find anything unusual, so he had people take the two bodies away and then let everyone return to their dormitories. The little fatty lay on the bed and suddenly sat up. His forehead was full of cold sweat. He suddenly remembered what the little pervert had said earlier. If he wanted to get rid of him once and for all, he had to kill Xian Yuanzhua. The reason why the two of them stabbed each other was not, could it be that the little pervert had set them up on purpose? When he thought about how He Xinjiu had led them to rob for no reason and had taken out a whip to provoke them, the more he thought about it, the more he felt that everything had been planned by her. How could a 5-year-old girl have such meticulous thoughts? The little fatty was frightened but also a little impressed. He decided to follow that little pervert in the future. Anyway, he would not suffer any losses if he followed her. Moreover, Dabao had not made a move all this while. He always felt that Dabao was more powerful than Xiao Bao, so it was definitely not bad for him to be the little pervert's sidekick. Chapter 3484, A certain person who was angry the next day, Instructor Deng announced the decision of punishment. Although fighting was not prohibited, someone had died last night. Even if they had not killed the person directly, they could not escape responsibility. As the leader, He Xinjiu was deducted 20 points, Fatty and the others were deducted 10 points, and Xian Yuanzuo's roommates were each deducted 5 points. Then, this matter came to an end. Yun Chujiu once again realized that even a first-grade country did not have much status in the eyes of the Li Hen Palace. Otherwise, if a prince of a first-grade country died, it would not have been settled so hastily. Perhaps it was because 2 people had died, but the following lessons were much more normal. It was nothing more than teaching the Li Hen Palace's palace rules and some miscellaneous things. After Xian Yuanzuo's death, his followers had already become more active. They all wanted to replace him as the new leader and then compete with Deng Qianyuan. For a time, there were endless fights, but none of them provoked He Xinjiu and the other 4 groups. Yun Chujiu couldn't be bothered with these things. If Xian Yuanzhua hadn't provoked her, she wouldn't have set him up to die. This fellow only had one goal now, and that was to stir up more trouble and deduct all the remaining points. However, the trees wanted to be quiet, but the wind would not stop. On this day, He Xinjiu was secretly teasing a certain lord. The little fatty and the others ran back to the dormitory with bruises on their faces. Immediately after, the dormitory door was kicked open and a boy who was obviously taller than the other children walked in with his men. Little treasure, now that the 9th prince is dead, I, Liao Yuan, am the new leader. Do you 4 groups want to submit to us or do you want to submit to Deng Qianyuan? Yun Chujiu narrowed her eyes. This guy was about to kiss a certain someone just now. Now that he was disturbed by these people, the unknown fire in her heart immediately burned up. She said coldly, "Get out." Liao Yuan and his followers were stunned at first, and then they became angry out of embarrassment. This little thing really took themselves too seriously. He really deserved a beating. Liao Yuan took a few steps and raised his leg to kick He Xinjiu. Before He Xinjiu could move, Liao Yuan flew out like a kite with a broken string, knocking down a few of his followers. Yun Chujiu looked at the expressionless man in surprise. She was puzzled. The gigolo usually did not participate in these things. Why did he change his attitude today? The man looked coldly at Liao Yuan who was staggering up. For some reason, he did not like this Liao Yuan. He would not admit that it was because Liao Yuan interrupted Yun Chujiu's treatment. Liao Yuan was so unlucky that he did not even know who had kicked him. He thought that it was Yun Chujiu who had done it, so he was a little afraid. This stupid girl was really fast, but it was also because he was not prepared. He had to get back at her, or else he would lose his position as the leader. Thinking of this, Liao Yuan pounced on He Xinzhou again, and was sent flying by a certain someone. If it was not because he did not want to cause trouble, he would have slapped him to death. This time, not only did Liao Yuan see it clearly, but the other children also saw it clearly. This Dabao was usually quiet, but they did not expect him to be so powerful. Everyone immediately had the intention to retreat. They did not want to be abused, so they all stepped back and wanted to leave. He Xinzhou sneered and whipped the ground a few times. You want to leave? Those who beat me up will be beaten up for nothing. Either let me whip you a few times, or obediently submit to me. Chapter 3485 was impatient to play. Liao Yuan shouted fiercely, "Little treasure, don't go too far. Although your brother's skills are not bad, you are not a match for so many of us. Get lost. Did I ask you? I don't care if you want to submit to me. Other than this idiot, do you want to submit or not? Think about it, is there anyone more suitable than me? As long as you follow me, I promise to lead you to kill Deng Qianyuan." He Xinzhou said with a smile. Most of the children thought that the kill Yun Chuzhou said was to annex Deng Qianyuan's forces. Only little Fatty shivered. This little pervert was not going to kill Deng Qianyuan, right? The little Fatty did not quite understand. What exactly did Deng Qianyuan do to provoke this little pervert? Although they had only been together for a few days, the little Fatty finally understood that this little pervert was very lazy. If he did not take the initiative to provoke her, she would not take the initiative to deal with him. He did not know that He Xinzhou had accidentally seen Deng Qianyuan and Liao Yuan whispering together last night. She had not paid much attention to it. But looking at the situation today, he knew that everything that Liao Yuan had done was instigated by Deng Qianyuan. Since Deng Qianyuan was seeking his own death, she would fulfill his wish. Most of those children were originally fence-sitters. It didn't matter who was the leader. In any case, whoever was stronger would submit to whoever was stronger. Now that Liao Yuan was no match for Dabao, he immediately submitted to He Xinzhou. Liao Yuan nearly fainted from anger. He had originally brought people to deal with that little thing, but now, all his subordinates had become that little thing's lackeys. It was simply infuriating. When a few of Liao Yuan's competitors saw that Liao Yuan had lost power, they immediately began to mock and ridicule him, directly pushing him out. Liao Yuan gnashed his teeth in hatred and immediately went to Deng Qianyuan to discuss countermeasures. Deng Qianyuan had originally thought that victory was within his grasp. As long as Liao Yuan subdued the people of the fourth group, he would indirectly control everyone. This way, the chances of him remaining in the Li Hate Palace would be very high. Who would have thought that not only did Liao Yuan fail to subdue the fourth group, but his subordinates also defected to that little treasure? He was truly a good-for-nothing. Deng Qianyuan's thoughts were much deeper than Xianyuan's was. Otherwise, he would not have been able to recruit so many people. He comforted Liao Yuan, telling him not to act rashly. Unexpectedly, just as the two of them were talking, the dormitory door was kicked open and He Xinzhou walked in with a bunch of brats. Liao Yuan's competitors immediately cursed Liao Yuan for being a traitor and shameless. If it weren't for Yun Chuzhou not saying anything, they would definitely go over and give Liao Yuan a good beating. Liao Yuan's face was pale. He never thought that these people would come over to eavesdrop. Yun Chuzhou laughed coldly in her heart. No matter how deep these devilish children's thoughts were, they were just a bunch of idiots in front of her. Deng Qianyuan, on the other hand, was much calmer than Liao Yuan. He looked at Yun Chuzhou and said, "Little treasure, what do you want? Don't tell me you want to fight with us. We have 2 more people than you. If we fight, you won't be able to gain any advantage." Yun Chuzhou didn't have the patience to play any more tricks with these brats. She jumped forward and directly beat Deng Qianyuan up. Then, this guy stepped on Deng Qianyuan and directly asked his followers, "Do you want to submit to this king, or do you want to be beaten up by this king?" Chapter 3486 was finally eliminated. Those brats were shocked by He Xinjia's valiant behavior. When they looked at Deng Qianyuan's swollen pig-like face, they immediately surrendered without any moral integrity. He Xinjiu nodded with satisfaction. Then, she brought her people to the other dormitories. Without much effort, she took all the children under her command. Yun Chujiu was not afraid of Deng Qianyuan and Liao Yuanqi. After all, there were so many people watching them. This fellow returned to the dormitory and lay on the bed, pondering. It was not a good idea to continue like this. The East Phoenix country was without a leader. If she delayed for too long, her position as the female emperor might be taken away by others. However, how could she be eliminated quickly? It would be difficult to do so since she would lose points without causing trouble. A certain honored guest lying beside her had been waiting for her to continue treating his illness. Who would have thought that after waiting for so long, he would discover that He Xinjiu was asleep? A certain honored guest felt a little frustrated. The reason he gave himself was that the reason why he was so eager for the little rascal to treat his illness was so that he could recover his spiritual power as soon as possible. Yes, that was the reason. It was possible that He Xinjiu and Di Baiming had finally achieved their goals in the following period of assessment. They were frequently deducted points, and then both of them were eliminated. He Xinjiu was filled with joy. She thought that she would be able to leave the selection academy just like that. She did not expect to be told that, considering their safety, they would have to wait until the final 10 people were selected before they would be sent back to the Jun Tian kingdom. He Xinjiu held her breath. If she had known this would happen, she would have continued to play with the devilish brat. She waited and waited. After another 10 days, 10 people were finally selected. She did not expect that Deng Qianyuan and Liao Yuan would be among them. Little Fatty and the others were all eliminated. Yun Chujiu felt that as the king, she should comfort Little Fatty and the others. However, before she could say anything, Little Fatty and the others happily said, "King, this is great. We have all been eliminated. This way, you can lead us to play together in the future." He Xinjiu, did she lead these brats astray? In their eyes, playing with her was more important than entering the Li Hate Palace. However, when this fellow thought about it, these brats were not that old to begin with. They did not have the utilitarianism of an adult, so they were not that sad after being eliminated. Yun Chujiu and these eliminated children were brought out of the selection academy and then boarded a flying spirit tool. Yun Chujiu looked at the old man on the flying spirit tool and was slightly surprised. It was actually instructor Lu Jiaoshi who had asked them to kill. They were only escorting them back to the Jun Tian kingdom. Was there a need to send an instructor? Shouldn't he stay behind to continue the assessment of the students who had been selected? Instructor Lu Jiaoshi did not say much. He just told everyone not to play around and then left the cabin. Although Yun Chujiu was a little surprised, she did not take it to heart. She brought her followers and sat in the cabin obediently. 2 days later, at night, while she was half asleep, Yun Chujiu noticed that there seemed to be a smell in the cabin. Her heart was shocked. It was actually the soul-devouring powder. She could not help but frown. Could it be that instructor Lu Jiaoshi? What was he trying to do? Di Baiming had long woken up. He took out an antidote and swallowed it. Then, he exchanged a glance with Yun Chujiu. The two of them lay back down as if nothing had happened. The next morning, when the children woke up, they were shocked to find that their spiritual power was gone. Even though some of them found that it was caused by the spirit-devouring powder, they could not open their storage rings to take the antidote because they did not have any spiritual power. Chapter 3487 Unsealing of a Good Item. The children were terrified. At this moment, the flying spirit tool landed on the ground. Instructor Lu Jiaoshi had a few guards chase the children off the flying spirit tool and then entered a valley. The children were not fools. They naturally felt that something was not right. Some of the children began to cry and wanted to leave by force. They did not expect to be killed by Instructor Lu. With that, the rest of the children immediately lost the courage to resist. They could only follow obediently forward. The children were brought to a cave and then locked in a huge cage. Instructor Lu waved his hand and ordered the guards to guard outside the cave. Then, he laughed coldly, "Little things, are you curious about why this old man captured you?" The children looked at Instructor Lu in terror. Even in their dreams, they had never imagined that things would turn out like this. Hadn't they agreed to send them back to the kingdom of June? Why had they been brought here? This old man wants to unseal a good item. It must be soaked in the blood of a virgin boy and a virgin girl. Moreover, it must be fresh blood. You are the most suitable candidates, Instructor Lu Jiaoshi said with a strange laugh. Some of the children trembled as they said, You can't do this. If we don't go back, our parents will find the Li Hate Palace and demand an explanation. Instructor Lu sneered, "Find the Li Hate Palace and demand an explanation? Not to mention you guys, even if that 9th prince died, wouldn't he die in vain? When the time comes, this old man can just find an excuse to fool them. Who do you think will pursue this matter?" Hearing what Instructor Lu Jiaoshi said, the children could not help but wail in sorrow. They were really at a dead end now. They had truly experienced what despair was. He Xinjia's focus was on the good thing that Instructor Lu Jiaoshi had said. What kind of ghost thing could only be unsealed with the blood of a boy and a girl? In the middle of the cave, there was a well-dug stone pit. Instructor Lu Jiaoshi carefully took out a jade box from his storage ring, and then took out a thumb-sized bone from it. He Xinjia was shocked when she saw the bone. This bone was very similar to the one that Di Biming found in the fallen god abyss. She couldn't help but look at Di Biming beside her. He was still expressionless, but there were some waves in his eyes. This confirmed Yun Chujia's guess. Yun Chujio recalled what Instructor Lu Jiaoshi said before. Could it be that the seal could only be broken with the blood of a boy and a girl? Was the piece in the gigolo's hand unsealed? Was it also unsealed in such a cruel way? Yun Chujio could not help but spit at herself when she thought of this. No matter how cold-blooded and heartless the gigolo was, he could not do such a heartless thing. It must be that Instructor Lu Jiaoxi's nonsense. Instructor Lu placed the small bone into the stone pit with trembling hands. Then, he looked at the imprisoned child with a fanatical gaze for a while. This was the first time he was soaking in fresh blood, so he had to be careful. He had to choose 2 boys and girls with better aptitude. As he looked at them, his gaze fell on He Xinjiao and Di Biming. This pair of little things were brother and sister, so it was best to soak the holy bone for the first time. He Xinjiao saw Instructor Lu Jiaoxi's gaze looking at her, and she couldn't help but sneer in her heart. He was really courting death. She stuffed a few bottles of the antidote for the soul-devouring powder into the sleeves of the little fatty behind her. Although the little fatty was very surprised, he had been serving their king these past few days, so he had become more cautious. She immediately hid a few porcelain bottles in her sleeves. Chapter 3488 What kind of bone is this? Instructor Lu Jiaoshi walked to the side of the cage with a sinister smile. He took out the key to open the cage and directly took Yun Chujio and Di Biming out. The rest of the children looked at Instructor Lu Jiaoshi in horror, but they did not dare to go forward. They did not have any spiritual power now, so even if they tried to resist, it would be futile. Instructor Lu Jiaoshi locked the cage again and then looked at the 2 little ones. It's your honor to be chosen by me first. Come here, be obedient, and they'll give you a quick death. Otherwise, they'll let you bleed out bit by bit. Yun Chujia's small face twitched, and she said with a trembling voice, but we don't want to die. Can't you soak it in chicken or duck blood? Lu Jiaoshi, cut the crap. It must be human blood, and it's the blood of a boy and a girl, said Lu Jiaoshi viciously. Lu Jiaoshi, even if we die, we have to die to understand, right? What kind of bone is this? Why does it have to be the blood of a boy and a girl? Could it be that you made a mistake? Yun Chujia's face was full of curiosity. Lu Jiaoshi reckoned that he didn't have the chance to show off normally, but when he heard Yun Chujia's question, he said proudly, "What do you know? This is a holy bone. As long as I soak it in your blood for 49 days, I will be able to refine it, and then my spiritual power will soar." Holy bone. What is a holy bone? Is this thing a human bone or a pig or a dog bone? Yun Chujio looked at the small bone and asked. What Yun Chujio didn't notice was that when she said this, the corner of the eye of a certain person beside her twitched violently, and his face turned a little ugly. Instructor Lu Jiaoshi said impatiently, "How would I know what kind of bone this is? Anyway, it's a holy bone. Let's cut the crap and start." Instructor Lu said and reached out to grab Yun Chujio. He felt that this little girl was more narrow-minded, so it was safer to kill her first. Unexpectedly, just as his hand was about to touch Hei Shinjio ran away. She even shouted, "I'm only 5 years old, and I still have a lot of years to live. I don't want to die. If you want to soak that broken bone, just let your blood flow." Seeing that Yun Chujio still dared to escape, Instructor Lu Jiaoshi said viciously, "Stupid girl, you really don't know what's good for you. See how he'll deal with you when I catch you." "Really? Then come and catch me. If you can catch me, it'll be at your disposal." Hei Shinjio put her hands on her waist and said provocatively. Instructor Liu's face revealed a contemptuous sneer. This little girl was really naive. Not to mention that she was already poisoned by the devouring spirit powder. Even if she was not poisoned, such a small thing was not his match. Instructor Lu thought as he chased after Hei Shinjio. Hei Shinjio blinked her eyes. When she saw that Di Biming had already put away the bone, she ran even more happily. Instructor Lu Jiaoshi originally thought that he would be able to catch Hei Shinjio in a few moves. Who would have thought that the little thing was so slippery that he could not even catch her even after running around the cave several times? Instructor Lu Jiaoshi could not help but become angry from embarrassment. He threatened, "Stupid girl, if you continue to run, don't blame me for not being polite. I can kill you with a slap and soak the holy bone in blood." Yun Chujio curled her lips. TSK, who doesn't know how to threaten people? "I'm warning you, if you don't stop, this king will kill you." Instructor Lu Jiaoshi was stunned at first and then laughed out loud. Clearly, he felt that Yun Chujio was overestimating herself. He said disdainfully, "With just you? Not to mention that you are already poisoned. Even if you are not poisoned, 100 of you are still not my match." Chapter 3489 is for this King Yun Chujio looked at the arrogant instructor Lu Jiaoshi and revealed a brilliant smile. "Old bastard, you are quite good at bragging. Since you are so good, come and kill me." Instructor Lu Jiaoshi completely lost his patience and said fiercely, "Stupid girl, die." As Instructor Lu said that, he raised his hand and threw a palm at Hei Shinjio. This palm was full of spiritual power, and the surrounding airflow was distorted. Instructor Lu was filled with the thought that the speed of this palm strike was extremely fast, and that damned girl would definitely not be able to dodge it this time. Who would have thought that the little girl would actually leap to the side with her short legs, forcefully dodging his palm strike? Instructor Lu was flustered and exasperated as he threw another palm strike at Hei Shinjio, and was then dodged again. Just as he was about to throw another palm strike, a strong wind came from behind him. He hurriedly dodged, and then realized that De Bao was actually attacking him. Was he not poisoned? Di Biming did not give him time to think. He raised his hand and an ice dragon lunged at Instructor Lu Jiaoshi. Instructor Lu blurted out in disbelief, materialization of spiritual power. Aren't you from towering sky continent? Di Biming naturally did not answer him. Instead, he stepped up his attack. He knew that he was no match for Instructor Lu Jiaoshi. What he needed to do was to attract Instructor Liu's attention and let He Xinjiu save him. At this moment, He Xinjiu held a large kitchen knife and cut off the lock of the cage with a click. Then, she opened the door of the cage. The reason why He Xinjiu said so much nonsense just now was to stall for time and let the children in the cage take the antidote. Little ones, give it to this king. Didn't that old guy say that even 100 of me are no match for him? Let's teach him a lesson now. Only by killing him will we be able to keep our lives. Therefore, if you have any good treasures, use them on me. Do you hear me? He Xinjiu said sternly. Those children immediately rushed towards Instructor Lu Jiaoshi, who was fighting Di Biming. They hated him to death. If not for their king being quick-witted, they would all die here. They had to kill him. Instructor Lu Jiaoshi was shocked and angry. Weren't these children already poisoned? Why are they all fine now? What the hell is going on? The 5 guards outside the cave heard the noise and quickly ran into the cave. When they were halfway through the cave, they saw a big sack flying towards them. The 5 of them quickly dodged. The big sack fell to the ground, and the red powder inside flew in all directions. The 5 of them were choked to the point of tears and tears. Before the 5 of them could regain their senses, several bolts of lightning struck toward them. The 5 of them used their spiritual energy shields to defend themselves while rinsing their eyes with water. Finally, they saw a little girl standing in front of them. She was smiling as she hugged a black bird that was as fat as a ball and looked at them. The 5 of them saw a layer of red powder on the ground. Fuck, it was actually chili noodles. The 5 of them were furious. This little girl was too mean. The 5 of them did not have time to think. They removed their spiritual energy barriers and pounced on the little girl, trying to kill her. At this moment, the black bird that the little girl was holding shot a ball of flame at them. The 5 of them did not think much of it. Such flames were not a threat to them, so they did not dodge. The tunnel was narrow to begin with. The flame shot out by the little black bird immediately covered the 2 people at the front. Almost in an instant, the 2 of them turned into ashes. Xiao Hanio and Xiao Hanio looked at each other. Chapter 3490, Ice Block Talisman. Yun Chujiu sighed in her heart. Xiao Hei's fire of nirvana was indeed awesome. It was just a pity that, after using it once, it would take a long time before it could be used again. It would be fine if it could be used anytime. The 3 guards at the back watched as their companions turned into ashes. They could not help but look at the ugly fat bird that He Xinjiu was holding in fear. They could not care less about Instructor Lu who was inside. They turned around and ran out of the cave. They did not expect that after a few steps, one of their legs had sunk into a hole, the other 2 people's legs were also tightly bound by a few mycelium. The 3 of them were terrified. They could not care less about what was trapping them. They kept trying to break free and used wind blades to attack the thing that was binding them. Yun Chujiu secretly let De Hua out. 10,000-year-old single pig, attack. Kill them. This sentence worked every time. They didn't know what De Hua had experienced in the past. Anyway, after hearing this sentence, De Hua quickly turned dark and pounced on the 3 of them fiercely. The 3 of them were stunned when they saw De Hua. What the hell was this thing? Was it the materialization of spiritual power? How was that possible? The people of Towering Sky Continent had no way to master the materialization of spiritual power. However, the 3 of them quickly reacted and raised their spiritual power shields. Although they were trapped by the mycelium of Xiao He and Xiao Mogu, their spiritual power was much higher than Yun Chujia's, therefore, De Hua's attack was blocked by their spiritual power shields. The three of them quickly got rid of Xiao He and Xiao Moga's restraints and fought with De Hua. Yun Chujio narrowed her eyes. If this continued, De Hua would definitely not be a match for the three of them. After all, her spiritual energy was much lower than theirs. She thought to herself that she could actually use the talisman. However, she was afraid that if she used the talisman and caused the cave to collapse, it would be self-defeating. As she thought about it, she suddenly slapped her thigh. She was so stupid. She could not use the exploding talisman, but she could use another talisman. She still had the ice block talisman. This kind of talisman could slow down the enemy's movements. It would be a waste not to use it. Thinking of this, she took out a thick stack of ice block talismans and threw it at the three of them. The three of them were focused on fighting with De Hua. When they saw Yun Chujio throw a stack of talismans, they were shocked, however, they did not take it to heart. Such a thick stack of talismans was definitely not of high quality and should not have much effect on them. Therefore, the three of them did not try their best to avoid the talismans. A few of them landed on their bodies. The three of them suddenly slowed down. Even if it was only for a few seconds, it was enough to kill them. De Hua took this opportunity to smash his huge body directly at the three of them. Although the three of them managed to block the attack with their spiritual power shields, they had consumed a lot of spiritual power. They could only parry and could not fight back. He Xinjiu was immediately delighted. The ice block talismans in her hands were thrown at the three of them as if they were free. The three of them felt as if their hearts were going to explode. Where did this stinky girl get so many ice block talismans? After 15 minutes, the three of them finally could not hold on any longer. They were all killed by De Hua. Yun Chujio curled her lips. Just as she was about to return to the cave, she saw Instructor Lu Jiaoxi running towards her. It was obvious that he wanted to escape for his life. When Instructor Lu saw Yun Chujio, he raised his hand in exasperation. This place was so narrow. Where else could she escape to? She was doomed. Chapter 3491 touched the naughty children. He Xinjiu looked at the disheveled Instructor Lu and curled the corners of her lips. First, she raised her spiritual energy barrier to defend against Instructor Liu's palm. Then, she threw a thick stack of ice block talismans at Instructor Lu. Instructor Lu was in a hurry to escape. Moreover, he was confident that Yun Chujio did not throw any high-level talismans because it was impossible for a child to have so many high-level talismans. Therefore, he was miserable. Almost all the ice block talismans fell on his body, and his movements immediately slowed down. The children who were chasing after him swarmed up, and all kinds of spiritual weapons were thrown at Instructor Lu. He Xinjiu kept throwing ice block talismans at Instructor Liu's body, so that he had no way to fight back. After 15 minutes, Instructor Lu finally breathed his last reluctantly. He did not understand even before he died. How could the originally well-planned matter fail in the end? When the children saw that Instructor Lu Jiaoxi was killed, they immediately cheered up. Yun Chujio did not find Di Baiming among the crowd. She was shocked and quickly separated the crowd to enter the cave. She saw Di Baiming sitting cross-legged on the ground. His face was pale and his lips were purple. It was obvious that the fight just now had triggered the cold poison. Yun Chujia's heart ached, but she did not have any good ideas. Usually, she kissed him a lot, but that thing had learned its lesson and did not fall for it again. At this time, those devilish children had already dragged a few corpses into the cave. Then, they looked at He Xinjiu with admiration and gratitude. Yun Chujio was a little touched when she saw the devilish children's expressions. However, there were still some things that needed to be done. She smiled and said, "You were drugged by the devouring spirit powder. Although you ate the antidote, it was inevitable that there were some residual toxins. Come, eat these pills. The devilish children were naturally not on guard against her. They took the pills and ate them. Then, they passed out miserably. He Xinjiu let out the Meng Yanshou, then, she ordered, weave a dream for them and hide the matter of the bones. Tell them that instructor Lu Jiaoshi is going to practice an evil technique. Also, hide the pretty boy's ice dragon and my big kitchen knife so as to avoid any trouble. Meng Yanshou immediately followed He Xinjia's instructions and began to weave dreams for those devilish children. These devilish children did not have high spiritual power to begin with, and they were still in a deep sleep. Therefore, Meng Yanshou easily completed the task. 15 minutes later, the devilish children woke up one after another and rubbed their eyes. Why were they still asleep after eating the king's medicinal pills? Yun Chujiu said with a smile, this king added some qi calming and spirit concentrating things into the pills. This can completely remove the spirit-devouring powder from your body. Do you feel much more comfortable now than before? The naughty children naturally felt much more comfortable after a short nap. Therefore, they firmly believed Yun Chujia's words and were all grateful to her. He Xinjiu rubbed her nose guiltily and coughed a few times. Then, she pointed at instructor Lu Jiaoxi's corpse and said, in the future, the Li Hate Palace might investigate instructor Liu's whereabouts. Therefore, in order to avoid getting into trouble, after you return to the Jun Tian kingdom, directly hand over this corpse to the emperor and have him report the matter to the Li Hate Palace. The children were stunned for a moment. The little fatty was the first to react and asked, Your Majesty, what do you mean by this? You want to separate from us? Yun Chujiu smiled bitterly and pointed at Di Baiming who was meditating beside her. As you can see, my brother's old illness is acting up, so I'm going to bring him to look for a famous doctor. I can't return to the country of June with you guys. Chapter 3492, Prime Minister Sima's voice transmission talisman. The children were very reluctant, but they could see that Yun Chujiu could not change her mind. All of them were teary-eyed. Before this, they might have been a little perfunctory towards this king, but now, they really regarded this little girl as their king. The little fatty asked with a face full of reluctance, King, then when your brother's illness is cured, will you still return to the Juntian kingdom to look for us? Yun Chujiu blinked her eyes, that's hard to say. If there's a chance, I will definitely come to see you. You won't forget me, right? Hearing Yun Chujiu's words, the children expressed their loyalty one by one. Among them, the little fatty said the most exaggerated, Your Majesty, you are our birth parents. If I forget you, Your Majesty, I will become a bastard in my next life. Hearing the children's words, Yun Chujiu's eyes flashed with a faint light. Good. In that case, when Your Majesty is in trouble in the future, you are not allowed to leave me in the lurch. The naughty children naturally agreed. He Xinjiu thought for a moment and took out a piece of paper. Come, all of you sign your names and leave a memento for me. Those naughty children did not know that the person in front of them was a little devil who ate people without spitting out their bones. They immediately signed their names without hesitation. Seeing that the naughty children signed their names without missing a single one, He Xinjiu put away the piece of paper with a smile. Only then did she put away the piece of paper with a smile. After you board the flying spiritual device, send a sound transmission talisman to your parents. I reckon that someone will come to pick you up very soon. The green mountains will not change, and the green waters will flow forever. We'll meet again in the future. Yun Chujiu said as she hugged her chubby little fists. The devilish children left the cave while crying. They rode on the flying spiritual device that they had found from instructor Lu Jiaoxi's storage ring and left. Only then did Yun Chujiu turn her head to look at Di Baiming. After adjusting his breathing just now, although his face still looked a little pale, it was already better than before. Prince Charming, it's not good to stay here for long. Let's leave too. Di Baiming nodded, stood up, and the two little ones left the cave. After getting on the flying spirit tool, He Xinjiu immediately changed the appearance of herself and Di Biming and turned them into 8-year-old children. In order to prevent Jun Tian Nation from searching for the people in the Yulon Valley, they deliberately made a detour to Hao Tian Nation, which was the neighboring country of Jun Tian Nation. Although they might have to take more unnecessary roads, at least it was safer. Although they encountered some twists and turns on the way, with He Xinjia's glib tongue and a belly full of evil tricks, the two of them finally arrived at the territory of East Phoenix Nation after half a month. He Xinjiu was so excited that she almost cried. At that time, she had only helped Emperor Nanxian to borrow the dragon to kill people. Who would have thought that she would be struck by lightning and meet Mo later on? Then, she tragically went to the capital of Star Sun Country, Starry Night City, and then to the Yulon Valley. However, it was a good thing that she found Ghost Face Orchid and refined the antidote for the rejuvenation pill. This could also be considered as opening up a new life-saving skill. Just as He Xinjiu was sighing with emotion, she received a voice transmission talisman from Prime Minister Sima. When Yun Chuzhou heard the content of the voice transmission talisman, her face instantly darkened, and her eyes were filled with a fierce look. What's wrong? What happened? Di Biming's voice carried a bit of concern that she herself did not notice. Star Sun Kingdom sent a team of people to escort Ling Tianche and Yun Shiyu to the border of the two countries. Yes, it's the original Crown Prince and Princess Shiyu. They said that since I'm occupying the magpie's nest, the throne should be returned to Ling Tianche. If I don't agree, the Sun Nation will uphold justice and help Ling Tianche take back the throne. Chapter 3493, Miss Zhang's Territory, What do you plan to do? Di Biming was a little annoyed. If it wasn't for the fact that his old illness had relapsed, he would have killed those people directly to prevent the little rascal from wasting his energy. Yun Chuzhou slightly curled the corners of her lips. The Star Sun Kingdom only wants those two good-for-nothings to be puppets, and then slowly encroach on our East Phoenix Kingdom. Since they dare to play dirty tricks, then this emperor will directly make the sky-high continent no longer have the Star Sun Kingdom. Di Biming looked at the proud expression on Yun Chuzhia's face, and his heart beat violently. Soon after, a wave of pain struck him, and he fainted. When Di Biming woke up, he found himself lying on the bed. He looked around and found that he was still in the cabin. He reckoned that he should still be on the flying spirit tool. When he was looking around, he felt that something was not quite right. He lowered his head to look at his body, and it actually turned into the appearance of a 3- or 4-year-old. "Baby, you're awake." Yun Chuzhia's crisp voice came from the cabin door. Di Biming looked up. Yun Chuzhou had already returned to her original appearance. She looked at him with a smile. Di Biming was stunned for a while. Then, he remembered what Yun Chuzhou said just now. "Baby?" Was she calling him? "Baby, didn't you hear what little sister said? Why are you so naughty?" He Xinjiu walked to the bedside and poked Di Biming's forehead with her fair finger. Di Biming's body suddenly emitted a chill. The chill on his face seemed to have frozen into ice. He squeezed out a sentence from between his teeth, "Little Jiu, what do you want to do?" Yun Chuzhou poked a certain venerable's small face with her hand, "Baby, don't be angry. Your cold poison has acted up again. I can only make you smaller so that your symptoms can be alleviated. Heaven and earth, I'm doing this for your own good." Di Biming looked at her with a cold smile. If she didn't laugh so hard, perhaps he would still believe her words. He gritted his teeth and said, "This venerable self can hold on. Give me the antidote." "That won't do. We are about to reach the palace. If I bring you in without changing your appearance and let people see that you are injured, there will definitely be trouble. If I bring you in after changing your appearance, those people will think that their female emperor is a fickle woman. Hence, you can only appear in the imperial palace in the form of this little bun. I can just make up an excuse to cover it up," He Xinjiu said with a straight face. Di Biming naturally did not believe her words. However, his current spiritual power was much weaker than before and he was no match for Yun Chuzhou. Furthermore, his body had also become smaller. He could only take a few deep glances at Yun Chuzhou. He said coldly, "It's best if that's the case. Little Zhou, if you do anything out of line, this venerable self will teach you a lesson sooner or later." Yun Chuzhou agreed with a smile on her face. This fellow's mouth twitched in his heart. "Little fellow, today is the day you drink, today is the day you get drunk. When you come to the Little Miss territory, you will suffer." Under the arrangements of Prime Minister Sima and Yun Jichen, Yun Chuzhou sneaked back to the imperial palace without anyone noticing. Yun Chuzhou had long planned with Prime Minister Sima. After she went missing, Prime Minister Sima made up a story to fool Emperor Nan Xian before leading his men back to the capital of the East Phoenix country. After returning to the capital, he told the public that she was in closed-door cultivation, so he did not attend the morning court. However, it was a good thing that He Xinjiu was very lazy and rarely attended the morning court before, so she did not arouse any suspicion. When Prime Minister Sima saw that His Majesty had returned safely, he originally had a lot to say. However, when he saw the little boy held by His Majesty, he was instantly scared out of his wits. Chapter 3494, Yun Chuzhiu's letter of credence. Prime Minister Sima looked at the cold and stern face of the little boy with a dumbfounded expression. Although his appearance was not very similar to that young Master Di from before, but this temperament was clearly the son of the young Master Di. Oh my God! This was the illegitimate child of their emperor. Ah Pui! What illegitimate child, this was the crown prince of their East Phoenix kingdom. Oh my God! Their emperor's secrecy work is really good. He even said that he had entered some place by mistake and was unable to escape. Could it be that he had gone to fetch his son? The more Prime Minister Sima thought about it, the more he felt that this was the case. He solemnly said, "Your Majesty, since you have brought the crown prince back, do you want to publicly announce his identity?" Yun Chuzhou was drinking tea. When she heard Prime Minister Sima's words, the tea in her mouth immediately spurted out. Crown Prince? This old man couldn't possibly think that the gigolo was her son, right? Di Biming's expression was even gloomier. What kind of master had what kind of slave? Could this old man be blind? Yun Chuzhou laughed so hard that she fell back and forth. However, when she saw Di Biming's ashen face, she immediately held back her laughter and said, "Prime Minister Sima, you have misunderstood. This is not my son. This is an orphan that I picked up by accident. I have taken him as my god-brother." Prime Minister Sima immediately said, "Your Majesty, I understand all your difficulties. However, isn't it a difference in seniority to take him as my brother? It's better to take him as my godson." Yun Chuzhou was stunned at first. Then, she laughed so hard that she almost fell to the ground. She had decided to give old man Sima a raise. This old man was too cute. She was happy. The cold air on Di Biming's body made Prime Minister Sima shiver. The old man was still lamenting in his heart. He was indeed young Master Di's son. This temperament and attitude were too similar. Yun Chuzhou finally stopped laughing and said, "He really isn't my son. He really is my younger brother. It would be best if we could seal the news. However, just in case, you better make up a reasonable reason to prevent more trouble." Prime Minister Sima still felt that Yun Chuzhou was being stubborn. If this little boy was not the child of His Majesty and young Master Di, his old man would have lived in vain. Although Prime Minister Sima thought so in his heart, he still nodded and agreed. Then, he got down to business. "Your Majesty, the envoys of the Xingsuan kingdom are still waiting for news. How should we reply?" Yun Chuzhiu's giggling expression immediately turned cold. She sneered and said, "I will dictate and you will write." Prime Minister Sima immediately took out a pen and paper. His Majesty solemnly said, "The matters of our East Phoenix Kingdom have nothing to do with your Star Sun Kingdom. Scram as far away as you can." Prime Minister Sima, "Your Majesty, this is the national letter. Is it really alright to be so rude?" Prime Minister Sima saw that their Majesty was determined to be like this. As long as he embellished He Xinjia's words, he would be refined. However, the main idea was still the same as what Yun Chuzhou had said. Yun Chuzhou looked at the national letter that Prime Minister Sima had embellished, took out the jade seal and stamped it. Then, she said, "In a while, send this national letter to the emissary of the Star Sun Kingdom and tell him to get lost. In addition, have Crown Prince Yun lead an army of 100,000 soldiers to stand guard at the border. If the Star Sun Kingdom dares to cross the border, kill them without mercy." Although Prime Minister Sima felt that their Majesty's swift and decisive manner was quite bold, he said, "Your Majesty, the Star Sun Kingdom's national strength is obviously stronger than our East Phoenix Kingdom. If we really shed all pretense of cordiality, we might not have a chance of winning." Chapter 3495 was really pitiful. Yun Chuzhou said indifferently, "When we were at war with the Jingmu Kingdom back then, we had even less chance of winning. Didn't I still sit on the throne? So, what's there to be afraid of? Send me the information you've gathered on the Star Sun Kingdom. I reckon that the war will start soon. It's been a long time since we fought a war. I'm really looking forward to it." Prime Minister Sima was speechless when he saw Yun Chuzhou's eager expression. However, when he thought about it, although their East Phoenix Kingdom was slightly weaker than the Star Sun Kingdom, they still had their evil emperor. What empty city stratagems! What traps! They would torture him to death. After giving himself a hint, Prime Minister Sima left in high spirits. When Yun Chuzhou saw that Prime Minister Sima had left, she smiled and looked at a certain person with an indifferent expression. "Baby, let's go. Little sister will bring you around the imperial palace." Di Biming said coldly, "This venerable one wants to cultivate. This venerable one also advises you. If you have time, why don't you think of a countermeasure? Don't waste your time on useless things." Yun Chuzhou looked at the cute-looking person and said, "Such a big reason." She could not help but reach out her evil claws to hold the little bun's face, and then kissed him on the face. The cold face of the one was suddenly filled with anger. "Little Jiu, if you continue to make trouble, don't blame me for being impolite." "Impolite? How do you want to be impolite?" He Xinjiu looked unscrupulous and even used her hand to poke the belly of the one. If eyes could hurt people, He Xinjiu would have been pierced into a sieve by the one. Seeing that a certain someone was about to faint from anger, He Xinjiu finally realized her conscience and stopped teasing a certain someone. She said with a smile, "I'm just teasing you. Your body is weak, they'll bring you to your room to rest." Seeing that Yun Chuzhou finally stopped teasing him, Di Biming's expression eased up a little. Fortunately, this little rascal still knew how to restrain himself. A certain someone was clearly relieved too early. He soon learned that a little pervert who could snatch food from a devilish child was capable of doing anything. "Baby, come here and massage little Missy's shoulders. Baby, come here and massage little Missy's legs. Baby, come here and peel little Missy's shrimp shells." A certain someone naturally wouldn't agree at first, but He Xinjiu said with a fake smile, "Baby, if you don't do what little Missy says, little Missy will kiss you." A certain lord stared at Yun Chuzhou for a long time, but he still began to serve He Xinjiu with a cold face. When Prime Minister Sima came to deliver the documents of the Star Sun Kingdom, he saw the scene in front of him and could not help but twitch the corner of his eyes. "Your Majesty, you are your own mother. Is it really good for you to torture your own son like this?" Prime Minister Sima could not help but advise tactfully, "Your Majesty, the Crown Prince is still young. Let the palace maids do the work." As soon as he said that, a certain someone who was peeling the shell of a prawn for Hei Shinjo immediately pinched the prawn in his hand into a prawn meatball and stared at Prime Minister Sima with a gloomy face. Ahem, Prime Minister Sima, didn't I tell you before? He is really not my son. You can call him in the future. Hei Shinjo, who was useless at naming, could not come up with a suitable title after a long time. In the end, Prime Minister Sima said hesitantly, why don't we address him as Young Royal Highness first? After you give him a title, well, just add a title to it. Hei Shinjo nodded, all right, well, do as you say. This fellow did not know that Prime Minister Sima sympathized with her in his heart. It was really not easy for His Majesty. He could not even acknowledge his own son. This was the saddest thing in the world. How pitiful. Chapter 3496, Let Empress D come over. After Prime Minister Sima left with a heavy face, Hei Shinjo glanced at a certain person who was peeling the shell of a shrimp and said slyly, son. Peel it well. After saying that, the guy jumped hundreds of feet away, afraid that D Biming would punish her. She didn't expect D Biming to only look at her deeply and then continue peeling the shell of the shrimp expressionlessly. Hei Shinjo saw that D Biming did not pay attention to her and felt that it was meaningless. She went back to her seat and ate the shrimp. After eating a few prawns, Hei Shinjo reached out her evil claws and poked a certain someone's small face. The certain someone only frowned and did not say anything. A certain Jiu was definitely someone who would take advantage of others. When she saw that D Biming did not say anything, she continued poking and poking. She even squeezed the certain someone's small face into a bun shape. A certain Jiu still did not say anything. She did not even avoid Hei Xinjia's demonic claws. She only looked at Hei Shinjo coldly. Hei Shinjo instantly felt goosebumps when she was looked at. However, this guy comforted himself. The pretty boy was no match for her now. Moreover, he had become a little bean. What was there to be afraid of? If you don't take advantage of a bastard, it would be such a waste to waste such a good opportunity. Therefore, this guy continued to torture a certain someone even more. If it wasn't for the fact that a certain someone was now a little bean, this guy might have made a certain someone dance, strip, and dance. This guy even boasted shamelessly to a certain someone and said, baby, your emotions and desires have been sealed anyway, so you shouldn't know what it means to be angry, right? In that case, you won't take revenge on me in the future, right? A certain honored warrior didn't even look at her and sneered in his heart. He had sealed his 7 emotions and 6 desires, but it didn't mean that he was a dead person. Very good. In a few more days, he would be able to recover as before, and he wasn't afraid of settling accounts. On this morning, Prime Minister Sima ran over in a panic. Your Majesty, something bad has happened. The Star Sun Kingdom had joined forces with the Ghost Gold Kingdom and the Winged Fire Kingdom to form an alliance army of 3 countries to attack our East Phoenix Kingdom. Now, the army had already reached the border. The Sun Nation has sent a letter stating that if you don't give up the throne, they will start a war. Yun Chujia's heart sank when she heard this. If it was just the Sun Nation alone, she would not be afraid. However, now that the 3 second-class nations had joined forces, she had no chance of winning at all. Prime Minister Sima sighed at the side. Why did their Majesty have so many disasters? As soon as she became the female emperor of the East Phoenix Kingdom, the 3 southern dragon kingdoms started to cause trouble. Soon after, the Jingmu Kingdom started to stir up trouble again. Now, the 3 Star Sun Kingdoms wanted to force her to abdicate. This time, there was really no room for negotiation. Yun Chujiu thought for a moment and said, you should first stabilize the emissary of the Star Sun Kingdom and delay it for a few days. Prime Minister Sima nodded and then said tentatively, Your Majesty, only the Empress can help you now. Why don't you send a message to the Empress and ask her to come over? Empress D. The face of a certain someone who was peeling melon seeds for Hei Shinjo suddenly turned gloomy. He Xinjiu coughed dryly and said, he has something to do, so he might not be able to come here in time. Prime Minister Sima glanced at a certain someone and gritted his teeth. Your Majesty, although there are some things that I shouldn't say, you and Empress D already have a son. What's the point of separating the two of you? If he didn't save her, that would be too much. What could be more important than the both of you? Gotcha. The coffee table instantly turned into a pile of broken pieces. Prime Minister Sima couldn't help but shiver. Why did he suddenly feel a little cold? Chapter 3497, The Trash of Trash. He Xinjiu coughed dryly. You can go back first. I'll think about it again. Prime Minister Sima had no choice but to leave with a sigh. He lamented in his heart. His Majesty had a strong enemy outside the palace and a son inside that he could not acknowledge. It was not easy for him to find a woman who was heartless. He Xinjiu looked at a certain someone with a cold expression and then at the broken pieces on the ground. She sighed. Why are you throwing a tantrum? You even overturned my melon seeds. Di Biming frowned and said, you still have the mood to care about melon seeds now? What do you plan to do? Yun Chujiu spread her hands and said, I don't know what to do either. Anyway, I won't give up the position of female emperor. There will be a way. Seeing her heartless look, Di Biming's face became even darker. He frowned and said, I asked Xue Wuji and Enfeng to help you. Although they are a little useless, they are still much stronger than you. Yun Chujiu, if even a useless person was much stronger than her, then wouldn't she be a useless person among useless people? However, it had been a long time since he had seen Xue Wuji and Enfeng. It would be nice to meet them. Therefore, He Xinjiu said happily, good, good. I want to meet Brother Wuji and the little lunatic. Di Biming felt a little uncomfortable when he saw Yun Chujiu's happy look. However, he could not tell what the reason was. He sent a message to Xue Wuji and Enfeng with a gloomy face. Yun Chujiu naturally would not just sit around and wait. She looked through the information she had gathered on the three kingdoms of the Star-Sun Kingdom a few times, but the information she had was really limited. After a day, Prime Minister Sima came again in a hurry. Your Majesty, the emissary of the Star-Sun Kingdom said that if we don't give him a reply today, he will leave tomorrow morning. Take it that we have rejected their request. Yun Chujiu frowned. It seemed that the three kingdoms of the Star-Sun Kingdom were determined to start a war. They must have taken a fancy to this piece of fat meat from the East Phoenix Kingdom and wanted to eat it. Prime Minister Sima saw that Yun Chujiu didn't say anything and asked tentatively, Your Majesty, has the Empress replied to you? A certain honored warrior couldn't bear it any more and said coldly, Prime Minister Sima, it's young Master D or the Emperor. It's not some damn Empress D. Prime Minister Sima was stunned at first, then he said earnestly, Young Royal Highness, your father is His Majesty's man, so he is naturally his mother. Calling him young Master D is really a little strange. Yun Chujiu saw that Di Biming's expression was so cold that it was about to freeze. She quickly held back her laughter and said, Prime Minister Sima, this emperor will emphasize to you once again that you must call him young Master D in the future. Also, this baby is really not my son. Yes, this old subject will remember it. This old subject will not address you wrongly in the future. Then, what did young Master D reply to your Majesty? Prime Minister Sima said respectfully. However, he sighed in his heart. This was already called a baby, what else could it be but a son? Their Majesty was simply the most pitiful woman in the world. Yun Chujiu smiled and said, I'm afraid he won't be able to make it in time. Get his two subordinates to come over and help me. They will be able to arrive in a few days. Prime Minister Sima heard Yun Chujiu say this. He could not help but feel a little disappointed, Your Majesty, even if young Master D comes over personally, he might not have a chance of winning. He only sent two subordinates over, I'm afraid it won't be of much use. Do you have any other countermeasures? Yun Chuzhou shook her head. For the time being, there isn't any good solution. Do your best to stabilize the envoy of the Star Sun Kingdom. If it really doesn't work, add some ingredients to his dishes at night. He won't be able to leave even if he wants to, such as laxatives. Chapter 3498, Besieging the Way to Save the Zhao. Prime Minister Sima could not believe his own ears. Giving laxatives to the emissaries of other countries? Your Majesty, don't you think that this is a little immoral? Prime Minister Sima glanced at Yun Chuzhou. Seeing that she did not look like she was joking, he could only nod his head. In his heart, he thought that he should think of other ways to persuade the emissaries of the Star Sun Kingdom. If it really did not work, he would use the method that His Majesty had suggested. If he did this, it would be the biggest stain in his life. At this moment, the voice transmission talisman in Yun Chuzhou's storage ring started to vibrate one after another. Yun Chuzhou took it out and took a look. It was sent by Emperor Nan Xian and the other two. Yun Chuzhou could not help but curl her lips. She thought that these three old fellows were very calm, but she did not expect that they could not hold it in anymore. The content of the voice transmission talismans of Emperor Nan Xian and the other two was basically the same. They were asking if the situation was serious and if she had any good strategies to solve it. Emperor Nan Xian and the other two were now in the same boat as Yun Chuzhou. If Yun Chuzhou was forced to step down, they would not be able to recover either. Naturally, they were extremely concerned. Yun Chuzhou casually explained the current situation. Then, she asked the three of them to gather the army and prepare to start a war. Although Emperor Nan Xian and the other two were terrified, they didn't dare to ask any further. This was because they knew that if they offended Empress Zhou, they might not be able to hold on to their throne before the Sun Nation invaded. Yun Chuzhou put down the three people's voice transmission talismans, but her heart was moved. Back then, the three nations had joined forces to take care of the East Phoenix Kingdom, and she had used a counterplot to destroy the three nations. Could she do the same this time? He Xinzhou first let Prime Minister Sima go down, and then cupped her chin as she pondered. After thinking about it, she felt that it was basically impossible. The reason why the counterplot had succeeded back then was mainly because of her deep understanding of the situation of the various countries, and she had spies. However, she knew very little about the three countries of the Star Sun country, so the counterplot clearly had no effect. Di Baiming saw that Yun Chuzhou's brows were tightly knitted, and a sense of helplessness welled up in his heart. If his cold poison had not relapsed, he could completely help the little rascal kill the emperors of the three countries, and the three countries would definitely fall into internal strife. This would temporarily alleviate the crisis of the East Phoenix Kingdom. A trace of ruthlessness flashed across Di Baiming's eyes. He thought of the two bones that he had already found. If she was unable to survive this crisis, he could only take the risk in an emergency. Just as Di Baiming was thinking about it, he heard Yun Chuzhou laughing sinisterly. That laughter was exactly the same as every time she tormented him. Di Baiming subconsciously took a few steps back. Did she think of a new trick to torture him again? He Xinzhou reached out her claws and held a certain deity's little face. She kissed it a few times and then said excitedly, "Baby, I've thought of a good idea." Di Baiming was too lazy to correct her. He quickly asked, "What good idea have you thought of?" Yun Chuzhou said with a smile, "Surround Wei and save Zhao." Di Baiming had heard He Xinzhou mention the contents of the 36 strategies in the past, so he knew what it meant to surround Wei and save Zhao. His eyes flashed. "What do you want to do?" There are a total of 7 second-grade countries under the Jun Tian Kingdom. Currently, the Star Sun Kingdom, the Ghost Gold Kingdom, and the Winged Fire Kingdom have joined forces. As for the Willow Earth Kingdom, the Zhangyu Kingdom, and the Zhenshui Kingdom, they are not participating in the war because these three countries are not connected to the East Phoenix Kingdom. Even if they participate in the war, they will not get any benefits. If I can convince those 3 countries to stab the Star Sun Kingdom in the back, not only can I solve the current predicament, but I can also kill the Star Sun Kingdom. If I'm lucky, I can also take out the Ghost Gold Kingdom and the Winged Fire Kingdom. Ha ha ha, I'm so smart. Chapter 3499, Let's have a group battle. Bai Ming's eyes flashed with admiration. Although the little rascal's spiritual power was a little useless, his brain was still very useful. However, Bai Ming still poured cold water on He Xinjiu, who was so excited that she almost jumped up. Your method is naturally not bad, but how are you going to convince the other 3 countries? Moreover, time is tight now. Before you can convince the other 3 countries, I'm afraid that the armies of the 3 countries from the Star Sun country will attack. Yun Chujiu was immediately awakened. That's right, she did not have the voice transmission talisman of the 3 kings. If she wanted to communicate with them, she could only send a letter. Most importantly, if she wanted to go to the 3 kingdoms, she would have to pass through the 3 kingdoms of the Star Sun Kingdom. They would definitely not let the envoys of the East Phoenix Kingdom go over. Even if they could think of a way to go over, it would waste a lot of time. By then, it would be too late. While He Xinjiu was frowning, Bai Ming said indifferently, those 2 trash might be able to help. Yun Chujiu was stunned at first, then she hugged Bai Ming and kissed him. Baby, I love you so much. You are so smart. You are indeed my man. You are almost as smart as me. A certain lord was embarrassed and angry. Stop fooling around. Why don't you think about what to do? He Xinjiu finally let go of her evil claws, then took out a piece of paper and pen to write a national letter. She felt that the wording was a bit unrefined, so she had to call Prime Minister Sima back. When Prime Minister Sima arrived, Yun Chujiu told him about her plan. Prime Minister Sima was stunned for a while, then, he said with a face full of admiration, Your Majesty, you are really a man of great talent and great strategy. It is the good fortune of the people of East Phoenix country to have a majesty like you. No, it is the good fortune of everyone in Towering Sky Continent. He Xinjiu was so proud that she almost could not control how many letters she sent. She managed to suppress the pride in her heart with great difficulty and said indifferently, You are flattering me. I am only a little smarter than the average person. Here, this is the national letter that I have drafted. You can polish it. Prime Minister Sima took the national letter that He Xinjiu handed over. When he saw the dog-like words on it, the corner of his mouth twitched. As expected, no one was perfect. The words of their majesty were really difficult to explain in one word. Prime Minister Sima polished the national letter that Yun Chujiu had drafted. In fact, it was nothing more than plain English, Your Majesty of a certain country, you also know that the 3 bastards of the Star Sun country are currently besieging our East Phoenix country. If our East Phoenix country is divided by them, then their strength will definitely be stronger than yours. In that case, it's inevitable that they will have designs on your 3 kingdoms in the future. In addition, even if your 3 kingdoms join their camp now, let's not talk about whether they agree or not. Even if they agree, you and our East Phoenix kingdom are not close to each other, so you won't get any benefits. Now, an opportunity that can not only show your kingdom's pleasure in helping others, but also bring great benefits has arrived. That was, our East Phoenix country would delay the allied forces of the 3 countries, while your 3 countries would stab the Star Sun country in the back. They would definitely be able to take down the Star Sun country very quickly. When the time came, our 4 countries would join forces and annihilate the Ghost Gold country, and the Winged Fire country would be a piece of cake. When the time came, our 4 countries would divide the territory of the Star Sun country and the 3 countries equally. Wouldn't that be a wonderful thing? Such a good opportunity was simply a once-in-lifetime opportunity. Therefore, we must not miss out on this opportunity. This opportunity is now or never. Quickly agree to our East Phoenix Kingdom's proposal. Let's have a team battle. Chapter 3500 was really fierce. Prime Minister Sima was completely in awe of their emperor's eloquence. If he were the emperor of the three kingdoms, he would definitely raise his hands and feet to express his approval. If such a good opportunity was wasted, it would be simply intolerable to the heavens. Yun Chuzhou took over Prime Minister Sima's embellished national letter and took a look. She curled her lips and said, "Prime Minister Sima, you are quite talented. It's just that your handwriting is a little ugly." "Prime Minister Sima, don't you feel guilty saying that? His handwriting is ugly. It's simply 10,000 times better than your handwriting." Yun Chuzhou immediately told Shui Wuji the contents of the letter and asked him to forge 3 letters. As for the jade seal, he could just get a large radish to carve it. Shui Wuji and Enfeng immediately changed their route and went straight to the Willow Country. Yun Chuzhou thought for a moment. Even if Shui Wuji and Enfeng split up, the 3 countries would not immediately respond. It would take them a few days, hence, the most important thing now was to stop the 3 countries' alliance army from invading. Yun Chuzhou thought of this and immediately asked Emperor Nan Xian and the other 2 to lead the army to the border. She also brought Di Baiming and Prime Minister Sima to the border. At this moment, the emissary of the Sun Nation who almost died in the latrine had already returned to the Sun Nation. The allied forces of the Sun Nation had also gathered and were ready to start a war at any time. When Emperor Nan Xian and the other 2 saw He Xingjiu, their gazes were immediately attracted by the 3 to 4-year-old boy she was holding. Oh my, after not seeing each other for a few days, this Empress Zephyr had given birth to an illegitimate child. This girl was really fierce. A certain someone's eyes darkened. He swore to the heavens that he would never take that rejuvenation pill again, definitely not. He Xingjiu did not tell Emperor Nan Xian and the other 2 about joining forces with the 3 kingdoms of the Willow Country. This matter was of great importance, so she naturally had to be more cautious. Therefore, Emperor Nan Xian and the other 2 had worried looks on their faces. They felt that they were most likely going to be finished this time. However, they still felt a little lucky in their hearts. Perhaps that young Master Di of the female emperor of Fenghua would come over to help. After all, his wife and son were here. They could not just leave them be, right? With that great weapon, they might still have some hope of victory. Yun Chuzhou did not have the time to ponder over the thoughts of Emperor Nan Xian and the other 2. She immediately brought her men to check out the terrain of the border. There was neither a valley as a place to set up ambushes nor a formation that prohibited flying. It could be said that if the alliance army of the 3 countries wanted to attack, there would be no obstruction at all. It was not realistic to dig a trap. After all, the border stretched for tens of miles, and there was no way to complete the trap in a short period of time. He Xingjiu took out the map and looked at it. Then, her gaze fell on a winding river. At this moment, the atmosphere in the tent of the alliance army of the 3 countries was very warm. The generals felt that the East Phoenix country was simply not able to withstand a single blow, and it would not take long to take it down. The Star Sun country was the initiator country, and they had even sent their crown prince Xing Jinyuan over to supervise the battle. Therefore, everyone made Xing Jinyuan the commander of the alliance army of the 3 countries. Xing Jinyuan said with slight disdain, "The border of the East Phoenix country has no natural dangers to defend, and there are no large-scale formations. Once the war starts, the alliance army of the 3 countries will definitely be unstoppable, and we will take down the East Phoenix country in one fell swoop." Ghost Gold Kingdom's 7th Prince Jin Haokue agreed, "That's right. The East Phoenix Kingdom has been in turmoil for a period of time. Not to mention our 3 countries' alliance army, even if we take out any country, they wouldn't be a match for us." Chapter 3501 was actually withdrawn. The 3rd Prince of the Winged Fire Nation, Huaminji, frowned and said, "Don't underestimate your enemy too much. It is said that the female emperor of Zephyr Nation has a mysterious mind. For her to be able to become the female emperor of the East Phoenix Nation from a third-grade aristocratic family, she must have something extraordinary. It's just a rumor. What ability could a little girl have? Besides, even if she's a little powerful, she can still stop the allied forces of our three countries. I think she might send a surrender letter very soon, Jin Haokue retorted. Huaminji thought about it and agreed. No matter how powerful the female emperor of Zephyr was, she couldn't fight against the allied forces of the three countries alone, so he didn't say anything more. Everyone decided to wait another day. If the female emperor of Zephyr still didn't surrender, then they would start a war. Early the next morning, a general rushed over to report, "Marshal, the East Phoenix country's base opposite is very quiet. There isn't a single soldier. Should we go over and investigate?" Xing Jinyuan asked in puzzlement, "You said that there isn't a single person in the opposite base. Could it be that the East Phoenix country's people have been scared away by us?" Huaminji frowned, "I feel that this might be a trap set up by the female emperor of Zephyr Nation. When she fought with the Jingmu country previously, she used empty city traps and traps. Could it be that she has set up a trap in front of their main camp and is waiting for us to fall for it?" Although Xing Jinyuan felt that Huamingye's words were a little alarmist, if they fell for the female emperor's trap in this first battle, it would definitely affect their morale. Thus, he said, "What the third prince said makes sense. Just in case, General Feng, tell the soldiers to be careful and not fall into an ambush." Thus, General Feng led the soldiers carefully, and after some effort, they finally confirmed that there wasn't a single person in the East Phoenix Kingdom's camp. They had all retreated just like that. After Xing Jinyuan and the others received the report, they were all dumbfounded. They had actually all retreated. Wasn't the war not yet started? The people of the East Phoenix country had all retreated. Jin Haokue laughed out loud and said, "How is it? I told you that the East Phoenix country couldn't withstand a single blow. They would definitely flee when they heard the news. Who knows, that female emperor of Zephyr might surrender very soon." Huaminji disagreed and said, "If they were to flee when the wind blows, wouldn't that female emperor just send a letter of surrender? Would she need to bring her army along with her?" Everyone thought that it made sense. What was this female emperor up to? However, no matter what, they couldn't waste their time like this. They still had to seize the opportunity to pursue and attack. Thus, the allied forces of the three countries advanced towards the territory of the East Feng Kingdom. The allied forces of the three kingdoms had walked for several hundred li in a row. They had even passed by two empty cities, yet they still had not discovered the army of the East Phoenix Kingdom. Not to mention the army, they had not even seen a single one of the commoners. It was as if the people of the East Phoenix Kingdom had disappeared into thin air. In order to prevent themselves from falling into Yun Chujia's empty city plan or trap, the allied forces of the three kingdoms had to carefully scout every empty city or valley before they dared to continue forward. As a result, they had to stop and walk for several days. Xing Jinyuan and the others were very pleased with themselves at first. They thought that the people of the East Feng Kingdom had been scared out of their wits, so they had all escaped. However, things had unexpectedly gone smoothly, causing these people to feel a little uneasy. They had a feeling that something wasn't right. Could it be that they had fallen into the trap of the female emperor of Zephyr? However, thinking about it, even if there really was a conspiracy, the strength of the three kingdoms could still easily win. Hence, they continued to pursue. On this day, the three countries were blocked by a big river. Chapter 3502, River Styx. Reporting to Marshal, the river in front is the Heaven-Tracing River. Although it is forbidden to fly, there aren't any high-level water beasts in this river. Moreover, from the looks of it, it might be due to the lack of rain recently that the water level has dropped a little. The water surface is also very calm. It is completely possible to swim across. General Feng reported. Xing Jinyuan and the others stood by the riverside and looked towards the other side of the river. They did not discover the East Phoenix country's army. On second thought, although the heaven-tracing river's surface was very wide, it did not have any powerful water beasts. There was absolutely nothing to be afraid of. Just as Xing Jinyuan was about to give the order to cross the river, a general came over with an uneasy expression and reported, "Marshal, we found a huge rock in front. Please take a look." Xing Zenyuan's expression darkened slightly. What was there to see with a broken rock? However, he saw that the general's expression was conflicted. He still brought his men to the place that the general had mentioned. The soldiers surrounded the place from 3 layers to 3 layers. When they saw Xing Jinyuan coming over, they quickly moved aside, revealing a large rock inside. Xing Jinyuan focused his gaze and saw that the natural patterns of the large rock had formed 2 words, Netherworld. Xing Zenyuan's expression immediately became a little ugly. He naturally knew what Netherworld meant. This meant that if they wanted to cross the heaven-tracing river, they would be courting death. Where was this stone found? Xing Jinyuan asked gloomily. A few soldiers trembled as they said, "Marshal, this big stone was originally here. We didn't notice it at first, but we found a little bastard lying on top of this big stone. We wanted to catch it to make soup, but we didn't expect that little bastard to climb so quickly and disappear into the river. Then we saw that the patterns on this stone were somewhat strange." The soldiers also whispered to each other. The patterns on this stone were obviously formed naturally. Could it be a warning from the heavens? That little bastard could not have appeared on this huge stone for no reason. Perhaps it was to attract their attention. This was to warn them not to go any further. The soldiers then recalled that they had not seen a single person from the East Phoenix Kingdom. Perhaps the East Phoenix Kingdom had already known that the heaven-tracing river could stop the allied forces of the 3 kingdoms, so they had all retreated. When Jin Hao Kuei heard the soldiers' words, he could not help but snort coldly, "It's just a piece of broken rock. How can it be so mysterious? It's just a coincidence." As Jin Hao Kuei spoke, he slapped his palm towards the huge rock. In his heart, he thought that if he were to smash this rock into powder, this rumor would naturally fall apart. Rumble. After a loud sound, the huge rock shattered into several pieces. However, what followed was a number of miserable screams. "It hurts so much. My hand. My eyes. My eyes. Help. My face." It turned out that as the huge rock exploded, a lot of poisonous water actually sprayed out from it. That poisonous water had a very strong corrosive nature. Regardless of whether it was clothes or skin, as long as they were touched by it, they would be corroded away. Many soldiers had their faces injured by the poisonous water. Jin Hao Kuei was the closest to the huge rock, so he was also the most severely injured. Not only was his face disfigured, his left eye was forcefully blinded by the poison. If it weren't for the many high-grade elixirs on him, he probably wouldn't have been able to keep his life. Some of the soldiers whispered, "Oh my God. No wonder the word Netherworld is written on the huge rock. So it's actually Netherworld water inside. It's too terrifying. Could this heaven-tracing river also be poisonous water? My right eyelid had been twitching for the past few days, and I kept feeling uneasy. I heard that the female emperor of Zephyr was a divine phoenix emissary. Why would she run away for no reason? Maybe she intentionally lured us here to the heaven-tracing river." "Yeah, what you said makes sense. The heaven-tracing river seems peaceful. Maybe there really is some danger." Chapter 3503 Water Massacre. Xing Jinyuan saw the soldiers discussing fervently, and his face couldn't help but turn ashen. The battle hadn't even begun, and the morale of the army had already started to weaken. He said coldly, "This is just a small trick of the East Phoenix Kingdom. Whoever dares to make any further comments will be punished by military law." The soldiers immediately didn't dare to say anything more, but their hearts were filled with fear. They kept feeling that this heaven-tracing river was unusual. Xing Zhenyuan and the others had discussed it. Now that the morale of the army was fluctuating, the best way was to quickly cross the heaven-tracing river. Otherwise, the rumors would spread more and more. Therefore, the allied forces of the three countries did not rest and directly began to cross the river. The Star Sun country, the Ghost Gold country, and the Winged Fire country were not close to the sea, so they only carried a few large ships. It was obviously not realistic to transport all the troops there. Fortunately, the heaven-tracing river was calm, and there were no high-level demon beasts, so they could swim over. Therefore, Xing Zhenyuan ordered the high-level generals to take the large ships over, while the ordinary soldiers had to swim to the other side on their own. At first, the soldiers were a little nervous. Was there any hidden danger in the heaven-tracing river? However, it was difficult to disobey the military orders, so they could only brace themselves and jump into the heaven-tracing river. However, seeing that the big ship carrying the high-ranking officers had reached the middle of the river without any problems, the soldiers became bolder. They were probably scaring themselves, so nothing would happen. When most of the soldiers were in the river, someone vaguely heard a sound, which seemed to be the sound of a huge current. While everyone was puzzled, the sound of the roar became louder and louder. There was a huge current pouring down from the upstream. When everyone saw the huge current rushing towards them, they were instantly thrown into chaos. Some soldiers tried their best to climb onto the boats, while others turned around and ran towards the shore. All of a sudden, they stepped on each other. Screams and screams could be heard continuously. In an instant, the huge current rushed down. What was worse was that there were vines and water plants in the current. Those soldiers had no way to break free and could only follow the direction of the current and be washed down. Even the few large ships carrying high-ranking generals were overturned by the huge waves. The generals fell into the water one after another and were washed down with the current. On the shore, Xing Zhenyuan and the others were both shocked and annoyed. What was going on? Why did the flood suddenly start? Marshal, the downstream is filled with cliffs and cliffs. Moreover, it is forbidden to fly. Regardless of whether our soldiers return from the waterway or take a detour, it will take at least half a day or even a day. And we only have less than 1/5 of our troops left. If the people of the East Phoenix Kingdom launch a sneak attack on us, we will most likely be in deep trouble. Therefore, we should retreat first. Hua Minji suggested. Jin Haoki's face was covered with a thick white cloth. He gritted his teeth and said, "You are right. Whether it is that big rock or the flood, it is most likely that the woman emperor of the Zephyr Nation's vicious scheme. If we don't retreat, we might fall into her trap. That bitch, if I catch her, I'll definitely tear her into pieces." Xing Zhenyuan saw that the two of them had said so and immediately ordered Bai Li to retreat to avoid being ambushed by the East Phoenix Kingdom. They would wait until the troops had regrouped before discussing a good plan to cross the river. Who would have thought that the next day at noon, there would be soldiers running back one after another? The wounded General Feng almost cried out, "Marshal, the East Phoenix Kingdom has set up an ambush on the cliffs on both sides of the lower reaches of the river. We were disoriented by the river water, and we were entangled by vines and aquatic plants. We were like living targets. We suffered heavy casualties." Chapter 3504 had even more surprises waiting for you. Xing Zhenyuan was stunned when he heard General Feng's words. Then, he questioned loudly, "What did you say? Say it again." "Marshal, our people were ambushed in the lower reaches of the heaven-tracing river. They suffered heavy casualties." General Feng repeated. Xing Zhenyuan's head buzzed. Yes, both sides of the lower reaches of the heaven-tracing river were steep cliffs, and most of them were submerged reefs. It was simply the best place to set up an ambush. He recalled the Netherworld stone from before. The original intention of the East Phoenix Kingdom was not to use that stone to cause any harm to the allied forces of the three countries, but to force him to immediately give the order to cross the river. This way, he would not have the time to carefully examine the terrain and the surrounding situation. The East Phoenix Kingdom must have built a dam upstream. When they saw the army enter the river, they blew up the dam. This could explain why there was a flood all of a sudden. Moreover, the female emperor of Zephyr had calculated that once there was a flood, the remaining troops would not dare to cross the river by force. She could rest assured and deploy all her troops to the lower reaches of the heaven-tracing river to ambush them. This was a chain of events. The female emperor of Zephyr was indeed good at scheming. Xing Jinyuan had not put Yun Chujiu in his eyes before, but this defeat immediately made him sober up a little. Jin Haokui said in a flustered and exasperated manner, "Marshal, are we just going to suffer this loss? If it were up to me, after we gather our troops, we should immediately force our way across the river. We don't want to cause any more trouble." Xing Jinyuan looked at him unhappily. He was a little displeased with him. If it weren't for his bad temper that shattered the netherworld stone, he wouldn't have ordered them to cross the river immediately. It was really a waste of time. Xing Jinyuan was displeased, but because of the relationship between the two countries. He could only suppress his displeasure and say, "Seventh Prince, our soldiers have just been ambushed by the East Phoenix country. They will need to rest for at least 2 days. If they are in a hurry to attack, they might fall into the trap of the female emperor of Zephyr." Jin Haokui wanted to say something, but Huominji said, "Let's do a head count first. Then, we will send people to the upstream and downstream to check. If there are no abnormalities, we will cross the river again. It is safer this way." Xing Jinyuan nodded, and then ordered his men to immediately do it. The next morning, General Feng reported the casualty figures that he had calculated. The East Phoenix country had actually relied on a flood to wipe out 50,000 allied troops. Although Xing Jinyuan was mentally prepared, when he heard the number 50,000, his head still buzzed. They hadn't even fought head-on, yet they had already lost 50,000 men. If this was spread out, it would be a great humiliation. The three-country alliance army rested for 2 days and sent people to check the upper and lower reaches of the heaven-tracing river carefully. After confirming that there was nothing unusual, they prepared to cross the river again. Just as Xing Jinyuan was about to give the order to cross the river, General Feng pointed to the other side of the river and said, "Marshal, there seems to be a person on the other side." As the heaven-tracing river was very wide, Xing Jinyuan could only vaguely recognize that there should be a person standing on the other side. Just as Xing Jinyuan and the others were feeling suspicious, a clear voice came from the other side of the river, "Hey! Wasn't the flood that I sent you a few days ago a pleasant surprise? Hurry up and cross the river. There will be even more pleasant surprises waiting for you later." Xing Jinyuan and the others immediately guessed the identity of the speaker. It was actually that damnable female emperor of Zephyr. That was because other than her, no other woman would call herself emperor of Zephyr. After that, the female emperor of Zephyr slipped into the bushes by the shore and disappeared. Chapter 3505, The Sour Taste. The allied forces of the three kingdoms were instantly in an uproar. That female emperor of Zephyr was really too despicable. Was that called a surprise? It was clearly a shock. She said that there would be another surprise. Oh God, the flood was already scary enough. What terrifying thing had she prepared this time? Xing Jinyuan and the others were also bewildered. Although the upstream and downstream had already sent people to investigate and there was nothing unusual, when they heard what Empress Jiu said, they couldn't help but feel a little nervous. Humph. I heard that when the Zephyr female emperor fought with the Jingmu kingdom, she once played the empty city trick. This time, she may be deliberately mystifying things, but in fact, nothing happened at all. If it were up to me, let's rush over and ignore the nonsense. I want to cut that bitch into 1,000 pieces right now. Jin Haokue thought of his blind eye and hated Empress Jiu to death. Huaminji disagreed and said, that might not be the case. Maybe she is deliberately doing the opposite and making us think that she is using an empty city tactic. In fact, she has already set up an ambush to lure us into a trap. For a time, everyone agreed with Jin Haokue and Huaminji. Both sides had their own opinions, and the original head of Xing Jinyuan was furious. If not for the flood incident, the original head of the punishment town would have ordered to cross the river directly. However, he had lost 50,000 people in the first encounter, so he had to be careful. Otherwise, his prestige would be greatly reduced, perhaps the position of marshal would be taken away by Huaminji. After weighing the pros and cons, the original head of the punishment town had to send a few hundred people to cross the river first to check it out. In this way, even if there was danger, the losses would not be too great. The few hundred unlucky people who were chosen to cross the river first were so angry that they wanted to bang their heads against the wall. Why did they have to be the scapegoats? The female emperor of Fenghua across them was as cunning as a fox. She must have set up an ambush in the river. If they went into the river, they would definitely be in deep trouble. However, it was difficult to disobey a military order, so they could only brace themselves and go into the river. Because they were afraid of an ambush, the group of people were trembling with fear and walked very slowly. They swam all the way to the center of the heaven-tracing river and nothing unusual happened. Only then did they feel a little more at ease. After a long time, they finally reached the other side. They were afraid that there was an ambush in the grass by the shore, so they used their spiritual power to test it out. However, there was nothing unusual. Only then did they carefully climb to the other side. They were pleasantly surprised to find that nothing had happened. Damn it, it was another empty city trap. Seeing that those people had safely gone ashore, Jin Haokue curled his lips and said, "How was it? I told you it was an empty city trap, right? Hurry up and let the army go over, or else that female emperor of Zephyr will run away again." Xing Jinyuan nodded and immediately gave the order for everyone to cross the river. Finally, all the soldiers of the three countries' allied army passed through the heaven-tracing river and reached the opposite bank. Xing Jinyuan heaved a long sigh of relief in his heart. They had finally come over. In order to speed up their progress, the three countries' allied army only made a simple adjustment and then quickly moved forward. They were prepared to pass through this no-fly zone and ride on flying spirit tools to catch up with the East Feng Kingdom's army in front. Not long after they walked out, they heard a miserable shriek coming from the front. Large swathes of land began to collapse, and there were poisonous blades stuck in the ground. Due to the no-fly zone and the large area of the collapse, there was simply no way to avoid it. Although the soldiers had set up their spirit energy shields to protect themselves, they were unable to withstand the pressure, pushing, and trampling of the soldiers in order to protect themselves. For a time, cries of grief filled the field. This was not all. Suddenly, many soldiers of the East Phoenix Kingdom appeared in front of them, throwing countless talismans, chili powder, and poison powder at them. Only then did the allied forces of the three countries tragically discover that the wind direction today was blowing towards their side. For a moment, the sour and refreshing feeling was simply excruciating. Chapter 3506, What other schemes does Empress Jiu have? The situation was out of control. No matter how Xing Jinyuan commanded, no one would listen to him. They all sought ways to protect themselves. The army at the back saw this and jumped into the river in a panic. At least the river was safe. Who would have thought that there would be countless large ships coming down from the upstream and launching an attack on them? On the ship at the front stood a beautiful girl. It was none other than Empress Jiu. Xing Zenyuan's head was buzzing. He had fallen into another trap. Previously, the female emperor of Zephyr Nation had deliberately given up the two cities in order to buy time and set up this trap. However, he was puzzled. He had clearly surveyed the upstream and did not find any troops of the East Feng kingdom. Moreover, there were cliffs on both sides of the river. How did these troops of the East Feng kingdom suddenly appear? How would he know that the East Feng kingdom had a monkey-like Empress Jiao? After the three countries' allied forces had finished surveying, this fellow had used ropes to drag everyone up. As for the person who had spoken earlier, he was merely a soldier who was good at imitating people's words. Xing Jinyuan was at a loss as to what to do at this moment. Hua Minji said from the side, "Marshal, the morale of the army is in chaos now. Moreover, the area of the poison blade trap set up by the East Feng kingdom is quite large. I'm afraid that we won't be able to pass through in a short period of time. Why don't we turn back and capture the female emperor of Zephyr? This way, the East Feng kingdom's army will naturally fall by itself." Jin Haokue echoed, "That's right. To capture a thief, we must first capture the king. It'll be easy to deal with that slut once we capture her. Damn it, I didn't expect that slut to be so good-looking. If we capture her, it'll definitely torture her properly." Xing Jinyuan wished he could kill him with a single slash. At this point in time, he was still thinking about those things. What a waste. Xing Jinyuan immediately ordered the army to turn around and attack the East Feng army on the river. When the three-nation coalition army jumped into the river and was ready to surround the ships of the East Feng kingdom, those ships suddenly accelerated and instantly pulled a distance apart. He Xinjiu stood on the deck and said with a smile, "A bunch of idiots. Come and chase us if you have the ability." Xing Jinyuan was almost angered to death. They only had a few ships in total, and it was impossible for them to catch up with the fleet of the East Phoenix country by relying on manpower alone. They could only watch as the fleet disappeared without a trace. Standing in the river, the allied forces of the three countries felt that they were all idiots. Ever since they entered the territory of the East Phoenix country, they had not even fought a proper battle. They had been toyed with like grandsons by the Zephyr Empress. What bullshit allied forces of the three kingdoms. If this carried on, they would be completely annihilated. Xing Jinyuan gritted his teeth. He had just brought his soldiers ashore and was prepared to go over after filling in the traps. Then, he heard Empress Jiao's wretched voice transmitted over. "Hey, idiots, I'm back again. Come and catch me. Whoever doesn't dare to come is a turtle bastard." Xing Jinyuan had no choice but to bring his soldiers back to the water to attack the fleet of the East Feng kingdom. Before they could even fight, the fleet of the East Feng kingdom had already run away. After a few times, when Empress Jiao provoked them again, Xing Jinyuan did not order them to return to the river. Instead, he ordered them to do their best to fill in the traps. Seeing that the provocation was no longer effective, Empress Jiao did not continue to provoke them. Instead, she crossed her arms on the deck and watched calmly as the allied forces of the three kingdoms filled in the traps in the distance. Seeing this, the three-nation coalition army could not help but feel a chill in their hearts. This Empress Fenghua had a belly full of evil water. Could there be a conspiracy waiting for them? Chapter 3507 Their Majesty was not human on the deck. Prime Minister Sima's admiration for their majesty could no longer be expressed in words. The old man asked with his starry eyes, "Your Majesty, the allied forces of the three kingdoms have already lost 80,000 to 90,000 troops. Moreover, we have already formed a pincer attack from both inside and outside. Should we launch a general attack and fight them head-on?" The corners of Yun Chujia's lips curled up. "No, pass down the order. While the allied forces of the three kingdoms are filling in the traps, get the people on the shore to retreat quickly." Prime Minister Sima was very puzzled by Yun Chujia's decision. "Your Majesty, this is a once-in-lifetime opportunity. If we retreat again, we will have to give up 2 more cities before we can retreat to Boulder City, which has a no-fly formation. Why are you doing this?" Yun Chujio smiled faintly. "If we kill them all, the three kingdoms will send another army, and there will be even more of them. At that time, we may not be able to hold out for a long time, so we will have to keep these idiots. Their role is to help us stall for time. Prime Minister Sima was stunned for a long while before he understood Yun Chujia's meaning. His Majesty wanted to hang Xing Jinyuan and the others. Although it had dampened their spirits, he still wanted to give them hope. This way, the three kingdoms of the Sun Nation would not continue to send their armies over, only then would the East Phoenix Kingdom be able to hold out for a period of time and wait for news from the three kingdoms of the Willow Land Nation. Prime Minister Sima felt that His Majesty was simply not a human. His thoughts were always unexpected. It often made one feel that they had guessed correctly, but in the end, they discovered that it was not the case at all. Prime Minister Sima immediately ordered the people on the shore to quickly retreat to Boulder City. At the beginning of the war, Yun Chujio had already sent people to settle all the civilians in other cities. Therefore, the few cities near the border had long been empty. Yun Chujio felt that it was about time. She stretched her neck and shouted, "Hey, idiots! I don't have time to play with you anymore. See you later." After He Xingjiu said that, she immediately led the fleet upstream and soon disappeared. Xing Jinyuan was so angry that he gnashed his teeth. He wanted to go upstream to stop them, but he was afraid that he would be ambushed, so he could only give up. "Marshal, I think that stupid girl has run out of tricks. Otherwise, the army in front of her and her wouldn't have escaped just like that. They are relying on this heaven-reaching river. There is no such river anymore. Sooner or later, she will fall into our hands," Jin Haokue said with a cold smile. Huaminji frowned, "I have a feeling that something is not right. The East Phoenix Kingdom has already formed a pincer attack on us from both inside and outside. Why doesn't she make a move?" Jin Haokue snorted, "Although they have formed a pincer attack from inside and outside, many of their soldiers are from the original third-grade countries. Their spiritual power is lower than our soldiers. Naturally, she doesn't dare to confront them head-on. She can only use some unorthodox methods." When Xing Jinyuan and Huaminji heard this, they felt that what he said made sense. This could also explain why the East Phoenix country wanted to give up on surrounding them. Finally, the allied forces of the three countries filled up all the traps before they gave chase once again. After passing through 2 cities in a row, they were all empty. Not a single person was there until a towering city blocked the path of the allied forces of the three countries. "Marshal, ahead is Boulder City. It is said that this city got its name because there were many boulders here before. Later, the commoners used those boulders to build this Boulder City. Boulder City's city is very sturdy. It is easy to defend but hard to attack. I'm afraid we will need to spend a lot of effort to take it down," General Feng explained. "You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.